Council met in closed session, discussed the one item. Direction was given, no reportable action was taken.
Thank you. Call the regular meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bragg?
Here.
Councilmember Spriggs?
Here.
Councilmember Bilbray?
Here.
Mayor Janney?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Patton is absent.
And for the public's, Mr. Patton, let me know that he'd be a little bit late. He is, as we all know, is a teacher, and he's holding an open house and is on the traffic problems at the moment. So, could you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any agenda change requests for this evening? Not seeing any. We'll move right on. Mayor, Councilor, reimbursements and announcements. Ms. Bragg.
I have nothing at this time.
Mr. Spriggs.
Nothing at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Bilbray. And I don't think Mr. Patton has much, and I won't either. So, Mr. Hall, do you have anything from staff this evening?
Yeah, it's my understanding that we do have some Memorial Day festivities happening at Veterans Park at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. So just let everybody know about that.
And that is open to the public, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda this evening?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to consent calendar, items 2.1 through 2.6. I entertain a motion to adopt. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Could we please vote? We will take an oral vote on that this evening. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions?
Motion carried unanimously by those present. Patton absent.
And just a note, one of the items, actually 2.1 on the agenda, deals with trying to facilitate homes and apartments in town to be able to put solar and other energy conservation measures. It might take a little while. There's some paperwork involved, but I think it's a good thing that we're moving forward in that direction. Moving on to our first item, 3.1, Mr. Hall.
Mayor and Council, the first item tonight is the introduction of an ordinance that would create a recreation committee. And I believe that we have had a couple of different discussions on this. One thing that I would say in discussions with the city attorney, in the actual ordinance, which is page 2 of the ordinance on number B, your municipal code already has a section in it for the replacement of members. And so it might be, again, this is a discussion that we would like some direction from the council. We identified that it was clear that the Parks and Recreation Committee would be an advisory body to this group, to the city council. And we wanted to make that statement fairly definitive. But if it ever got to the point where you felt like you needed to replace one of the members of the committee, we already have a policy in our code that would allow that to happen. And so there's been some suggestion, just to avoid any kind of confusion, that we change item B to simply read, and I have that, but essentially that you would replace any member consistent with the Imperial Beach Municipal Code section 2.18.030 and dispense with the other description in there, just so that we would be consistent with the other provisions in our municipal code.
Could you clarify what item B we're talking about here?
I'm sorry, in section 2.32.020B, which is at the top of page 2 of the ordinance.
Thank you.
And just to simplify that, to say that the replacement of any member of the Parks and Recreation Committee would be consistent with Imperial Beach Municipal Code section 2.18030. Simply, it would just simply make that more simple.
I think that's much better than, because I had this all marked up with, you know, who's going to judge if somebody is not adhering to the wishes of the city council.
Right.
No, we don't want that.
Whatever.
Exactly.
What does 2.18030 actually say?
It says a member may be removed by a majority vote of the council or by the mayor with the approval of council. And that's for any member of a commission, board, or committee in the city of Imperial Beach.
There's no
So,
cause
no.
requirement in there.
Typically, there's not. This is, council members, council gets to vote to appoint people. They get to vote to remove. There's no cause requirement.
And that's the way it stands today for other
Yes,
committees and everything.
yes,
So we should stay consistent is what you're really saying.
absolutely.
Correct.
And remove all of that language.
Do we have any other further discussion on this item? I think, Mr. Bilbray, you really thought this was an important item also to bring forward. So what we have before us is an idea for a motion.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, before,
Yes.
I actually did have a couple of thoughts on this.
Oh, okay.
On compensation and quorum, where it talks about consisting of 5 members.
Correct.
There's no indication of whether these need to be Imperial Beach residents or not,
Oh, I know on our other ones they are.
unless I missed it.
I believe that's in your municipal code also. I just need to pull it up.
That's covered in A, that's chapter 2.18, but she's pulling that up, 2.18 of the Imperial Beach Municipal Code.
I see, so it's not in,
Again, just to be consistent with the appointment of the other committees.
Can I ask a question with that, Mr. Spriggs? Because on 2.18, if I remember it, I might be wrong since the city attorney's got it up right now.
Yes.
Was there an age limit on that?
No, there's no age limit. It just says all members of commissions, boards, and committees of the city shall be residents of the city.
Okay, that's important to us on this committee.
so we could get a youth member
Correct.
without any problem. I think that's what you're getting at.
Correct.
I think in this case, I'm going to argue the other side now, where we would want to have room for maybe one of the 5 members, if it were necessary to have some recreation, parks management, youth program expertise that we didn't have in the community on the commission. On the committee. We've talked about this a little bit before, but now that we're seeing it in writing and kind of locking into a particular approach, it seems to me we ought to at least think about some sort of exception where if there was a particular skill needed that was not available in the community, that no more than one member could be a non-resident of Imperial Beach. I just throw that out for consideration.
To Councilman Spriggs, one of the things that we could point out is that the Parks and Recreation Board could call any experts to come forward and assist them as well. So if you did not want to have, if you did not want to open it up to, if you want to keep it within residents of the city, you could do that and give them the authorization to call experts as needed to help them conduct their business. That's another way of approaching it. So.
Or you could add in some language that says, members shall be residents unless otherwise decided by a majority vote of the city council. So that would allow flexibility of future councils. And it would only apply to this board because this would be under the Parks and Rec. So I could quickly add maybe section F to that area that specified that if the council's interested.
Yeah, I think that would be good. It depends on the
Right. I mean, I'd like to hear some other input on that from your colleagues there. Ms. Bragg?
I think that Mr. Spriggs brings up a good point. There may be a member not necessarily in the city limits of the city of Imperial Beach, maybe from Chula Vista or National City, certainly the city of San Diego, who could bring a little bit more expertise. I would really have no problem with another member or neighboring community having a person be on our board as long as it was not a majority.
Right.
So like we were saying, if it could be, majority would be residents of the city of Imperial Beach.
But this is only for specific reasons. I mean, it's not in general. It's because we're looking for a qualification I thought that, you're looking for 5 members of a committee here. What Mr. Spriggs originally brought up is if 20 people applied, and out of those 20 people applied, we didn't have an expertise in what you were talking about, we could go out. But if there was somebody here locally, we wouldn't want to necessarily open it up to say then the fifth position could go to anybody just because we already got it. I think it should be specific enough for why we're going outside the city limits.
Right, so that just adds a little complexity to what the city attorney is
She's writing away.
gonna have to write here. But I think that's fine. We would want to add that kind of consideration that it would be except the city council would have the exceptional sort of authority to go non-resident for a specific reason, such as expertise not available in the city, or expertise not amongst the resident candidates, right?
Mr. Bilberry, do you have any comments? I know this is something you've been very much interested in.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around what's been said, trying to digest it. I wouldn't really have a problem with somebody from the outside of the city, but if it's going to be appointed, I think it should be more than just a majority vote. It should be
outside.
For to be outside the city, a resident outside the city should almost be a super majority.
So a 4/5 vote of the council
Yeah,
to appoint a non-resident
exactly.
for a specific. Okay.
That'd be my only recommendation for it.
Okay, that makes sense. Mr. Spriggs, do you have some others? Because I know you were thinking along those lines. We're
Thank you,
giving the
Mr. Mayor.
attorney time to write, so.
And we may be able to maybe jump ahead to another item and then come back to do
That's
the
correct.
final approval. Okay.
The only other item I had on this is under duties and responsibilities, where the first line is that the Parks and Recreation Committees shall meet on a quarterly basis and will act in a purely advisory in capacity to the City Council. I think we should leave flexibility here for more regular or more frequent meetings if requested by the City Council. If an issue pops up, for example, we should be able to refer it to the committee and ask that they report back to the City Council in 2 weeks or whatever is a reasonable time.
So maybe it's somehow in there, and we're asking the attorney, of course, to do this, or quarterly, or at the council's request, or something like that.
Exactly.
That would do it, so that we're not
At least a quarter.
we're not saying that it's going to be this way, right?
Right, exactly. It'd be at the request of the council.
So, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? Do you want us to move on for a little while?
Actually, yes. If we could move on to the next item, just so I can make sure it's really clear, because on ordinances,
I
I
understand.
have to
I
read in
understand.
every word.
I understand.
Okay.
Okay.
And then we'll come back to this one.
Okay. So what we're going to do is continue this item for a few items down. We'll go to item 4.1, and I have Mr. Levine to lead us through item 4.1. And it is a public hearing, so I'll declare the public hearing open.
I know it's here.
No,
Doesn't
we're
sound
not
like
hearing
it.
you at the moment.
It is on? Okay, I just have to talk louder. This is an item in which I'm asking or suggesting the council establish a set methodology for evaluating a capacity charge to different customer classes within the city. You may recall that a year ago you adopted a resolution that set the capacity fee for the city at $2,667. That is for every new development or redevelopment that increases the capacity of the discharge into our sewer system. There's a fee that is set at $26.67. And that's set at $26.67 per EDU, or equivalent dwelling unit. Equivalent dwelling unit is considered a single-family unit, and part of this study was to determine how many gallons is involved in a EDU. And the study showed that in Imperial Beach, it is 240 gallons. So part of what we're asking tonight is to say that that is what's considered an equivalent dwelling unit in Imperial Beach. The second is to, let's see if I can figure out how to get this slideshow up, is to say that an equivalent dwelling unit by user class, customer class, this study showed, for instance, an EDU for a single-family residential apartment addition would be 0.75 EDUs. A new multifamily resident would be 0.75 EDUs per unit. A mobile home would be 0.5, etc., as you see on the chart displayed here and also in your staff report. If there is a customer that comes in and it does not fit neatly into this class, we have the plumbing code basically says that a single-family unit has on average 20 drainage units per family, per house, per unit. And so if there were a case where we had to determine something outside of the class that is shown here, we would look at the number of drainage units and consider each 20 drainage units as one EDU and calculate the capacity fee for that new development or new customer. Tonight I'm asking you to approve a resolution that will write this out in an objective manner as I've displayed it here. You should know that in the past, the staff has estimated these based on what other cities have used for equivalency for a dwelling unit. And so it's not unique or different than what we're doing. We're asking you to do based on this formal study that the city commissioned by an expert in this area to give us an objective set of criteria to be able to know that we're objectively doing every unit the same or every developer the same.
Thank you. Do we have any public speaker slips on this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Questions for staff, thoughts on this particular item from my colleagues? Ms. Bragg?
Thank you. Mr. Levine, what other cities did you ask, or what other cities did you look at as comparison? Any in this area?
These are pretty consistent with City San Diego, which is the one that I've used as a model before. When the study was done, I'm not sure that I have any comparison to other cities, but this is pretty standard across California and particularly Southern California.
And you seem confident that if we had something, you have your graph here, if we had some business that came to town, you're pretty confident with what you were talking about, the drainage, the number of drainages, that we would be able to fit them somewhere into a slot without any discomfort at all?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions? I'm going to close the public hearing down. We don't have any public speakers for this. I do have one question, or maybe two, for Mr. Levine. The 240, what has it been in the past?
There has not been a gallon
No problem.
set to it. We've not studied it from that perspective.
Okay, so then looking at the chart that you have before us right now, are there many changes that are going to stick out on this as far as the 0.5s or the 0.7s or the 6s or wherever they might be?
I would say that my memory is for a multifamily, we have typically said it's 1 EDU, where this study is suggesting that it should be more appropriately 0.75, for instance. On the car wash of
Hang on a second.
Sure.
A single family is still one. The 0.75 goes to a single
family apartment or multifamily addition.
Oh, for an addition.
For a multifamily residential or an apartment addition.
Okay.
So if you're putting some people call it a granny flat. I don't know if that's an appropriate text,
we know what it means, but I don't know if it's a technical term.
It would be it would be 0.75 EDUs rather than one full EDU for
I see what you
an
mean by
addition
that.
put
So
on.
that's where the single family part of the 0.75 comes in, right?
Yes.
Okay. How about down here on some of the other uses, restaurants, for instance?
I can't recall what we did when we've added a restaurant. There haven't been very many that have converted from something other than what was there now. If they already exist and they're just remodeling, unless they're expanding, there would be no change in EDUs.
But if they had a different rate right now, and all they were doing is putting a facade on the front, their rate wouldn't change, even though it wasn't 3.0 per 6 seats or whatever.
They would have to be adding drainage units to it.
I see. Okay. Anything else stand out for you?
The laundromat, I know we've had a couple of those since I've been here, and that is the same number as I used from references from LA and San Diego.
And we've used that number before in the past.
We have. Yes, sir.
That answers my questions. Do we have any other thoughts on anybody? I'd entertain a motion then to adopt resolution 2014-7484. We have a motion and a second. Could we please vote?
Motion carried unanimously by those present, Patton absent.
And I take it you were still working on our item 3.1, so let's go ahead and move to item, in this case, 5.1. Mr. Levine.
This item has been before you twice before, and I've crafted the staff report to hopefully better explain the message that I'm trying to pass out in the staff report and resolution is that last year you approved a study, 5-year revenue study, set a recommended rate adjustment per year. First year, which was the year that we're in right now, was 3%, and the study suggested subsequent years should be 1.6% per year, and that was all done through 218 noticing, so the residents, customers are aware of this 5-year plan. What we did this year was to just come back to you and let you know that we were following that plan and getting your concurrence that we would go forward as the plan. There was a question about as I understood it, why was the 1.6 really needed given our revenue and expenditures last year and what's predicted, or this year and what's predicted for the future. And in the table that is on your page 2 of 3 of the staff report, and as shown here, I'm attempting to demonstrate that the revenue and the expenditures are the revenue is a little bit less than what we projected in the study, and the expenditures are a little bit greater. For instance, you see the revenue is $118,865 less, and the expenditures are $19,765 for a total of about 140,000 difference in fiscal 13-14, and then if you look at similarly in fiscal 14-15, it's projected, because we haven't got there yet, that we'll have another difference of a couple 100,000. And we also presented in your staff report that we had capital improvement projects either constructed or underway or planned for the next 2 fiscal years at a budget of 1.9 million. And what I was hoping that I was showing that the 1.6% increase that you budgeted or approved last year is necessary in order to maintain the health of our sewer enterprise fund. I'd like to go back to the previous slide. You also approved in the budget or in the study that there would be 400,000 set aside each year plus CPI increases over time of 400,000 for capital projects. Given what our revenue and expenditures are forecast to be this year for fiscal 14, we're going to have about $261,370 available for capital. So we're a little bit short. And again, what I'm suggesting is that the 1.6 is truly in line with the need to follow the plan that was laid out in the study. I'm going to stop at that point and offer the opportunity for questions and try to answer it. I do also have Karen Keys here in the audience, and she's willing. She willingly came down to participate in this presentation, and she can answer some of the questions that because she did the study for us.
Mr. Spriggs?
I'm sorry, Mr. Levine, but once again, I got lost in your numbers. So, and maybe we can clear this up simply. And I wouldn't want Karen Keys to have made a trip here for naught. So it may be that we need her to help clarify this. I don't know. So the simplest, I think, way for me to put my question to you is, against what number is the 1.6 increase being applied? I mean, is it a 1.6 increase over the and the rate study revenue, or what's being increased by 1.6% in terms of this chart right in front of us all right now?
What you're seeing is the 1.6 is a projected revenue increase that you would have from the previous year. So it's projected. How do I say it?
It would eliminate
the 1.6 is on the rate. Okay. So if the single family rate is $8, let's say make it rounded $10 per EDU, then this would be a 1.6% increase on average per customer by
Right.
rate.
But what we're trying to do is eliminate that $138,630 shortfall. That's and then the anticipated shortfall for next year. That's what the net effect is going to be, to bring us back so that we have a net for capital that we had planned
Yeah,
on.
I'm obviously not.
Well,
No, the answer is
it's me. It's not you. I'm just not seeing how it applies to the chart you've given us in front of us. That's all.
the 1.6% is, we are not redoing the study, not regenerating another number for you. We're just asking that you follow the revenue study that was provided. It is not making up any shortfall. If we end up where we have to recover shortfall, we'll have to do another update of this study.
Councilman Spriggs, maybe if I could jump in for a minute. The difference you're seeing on your chart are some actual numbers that, when the study was initially completed, our revenue stream was a little bit different because we were receiving a rather large amount of revenue from the United States Navy. We're no longer receiving that revenue stream. And so it looks as though the revenues are lower, and that's true in accordance with this study. The reality, when you look at the expense is $19,000 below on $3.9 million. That's less than 1%. And so what we're saying is, that's the estimated amount. We still haven't collected all the revenues yet for this year. I don't think that the study is invalidated at this point. We want to go forward with the study, but in order for us to realize the numbers that you're seeing in the expense line item, they anticipate raising the revenues by 1.6% for each, I believe, of each of the next 4 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
1.6% for each of the next 4 years.
So I'm going to ask, so technically that first number on the upper left-hand corner, $4,300,000 some odd $1,000. If we didn't approve the 1.6, it would be 1.6 less, wouldn't it?
Correct.
So we're talking we'd be further, quote unquote, in the negative by quite a bit.
More than 118,000. That's correct.
Okay.
So you're saying, Mr. Mayor, you're better at math than I am. You're saying that the 1.6 is already in
Yes.
that 4.3 million in the rate study revenue.
Let me
And
back
we're
up just a
still
second.
running
The
a
13-14,
We're not.
the 13-14 is it was a 3% of this year that you raised. 1.6 is relative to the 14-15 column to the right.
So I was incorrect in saying that it's not the 4.3, it's the 4.4 would be 1.6%
Less.
less. Okay,
That's
thank
correct,
you.
sir.
Or in a sense, almost down to the 4.3. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we're now at 70,000 in the hole.
Is that the 71,624?
No, it's actually between 4.402 and 4.339 is another 70 in there.
Right.
Or 61, whatever you want to call it, but several tens of thousands of dollars. Ms. Bragg?
Thank you. My question then deals with Mr. Levine. On page 2 of our staff report, we've got 9 line items that we were considering that were to be design, construction. What will happen to those? Are we in risk then of some of those not being completed, some of those are not funded? What is our status then going to be? And that was for our 2014-2015.
Yeah.
What kind of condition does that leave us in?
Well, my plan is to continue with each of these projects in the order that they were plan, and based on the price that we get for the contract, these are estimates, and we're very conservative, so that we don't undershoot what our money is, available, revenue is available. And as if I get to the bottom and I don't have enough funds for this year, I'll push it into the next year.
Okay, so there's some of those items like televise the sewer main lines, perhaps, and you had 160,000 allocated for that. Maybe it would only be 100,000, maybe, and so you would trim away at some of those figures as best you could to keep
Absolutely
on track. Okay.
Absolutely.
I do have a question, and maybe our expert here can help me on this. And I know originally we were talking about the way we measure the amount that goes out and what we're assuming. And on page 3 of our staff report, you brought in 6 cities to give a comparison of how they do it. And I assumed something incorrectly in the past, thinking that we're more in line with either Chula Vista or El Cajon in our methods, instead of doing the whole year for calculating the amount I thought it was actually based on winter months, but that was, maybe it's because I'd heard it from another city. So from our expert's position, how hard would it be for us to go to one of those methods instead?
It wouldn't be hard at all. And I had discussions with city manager and with Hank earlier today, and if there are lots of ways to try and get to the issue of what isn't going to the sewer. Now, it was interesting, your city manager came from Payton, Utah, where it's perfect because everybody has an irrigation meter, so 100% that goes in is coming back out. So that's on the domestic meter. Winter water usage, there's probably 10 different ways you can do winter water usage. And everybody has a little bit different take on what they think is the way it should be done for their city. In your case, we take the annual and adjust it for industry standard rates of return that are approved by EPA for cities such as yourself that are required to have revenue programs that meet EPA standards. That was the way it was done when I did the study. It's a good way. You sometimes almost end up with the same number, but if you would like, over the course of the next year, I can run all kinds of different scenarios on your data, and you as council can look and see if there's a more appropriate way that you think to do it.
Well, I think what we were concerned, and maybe Mr. Bilbray will help me a little bit on this, is that we were concerned of, the front yard, backyard look of it, and we were penalizing people for watering their lawns, if you want to look at it that way, or whatever else they were doing with it. And I know that that's not where our discussion is this evening, but your idea of coming forward with some ideas that maybe of different ways so that we could show that maybe this works. As you said, the money might not change that much, but it might make it so that we feel more comfortable in our methods.
Right.
So maybe my take out of this, and the city manager and Mr. Levine can go back and figure it out. I think that when we come back and start talking about this in the next year, we should look at some of those other options and how they would affect the city of Imperial Beach.
And I think you ought to do it early in the year, because you do have to, well, just so that you have the time to make a good decision.
We'll listen to your recommendation. Don't worry. If you think
no,
that's
I mean,
I'm
going to come up with, I'll come up with 10 or 15 different ways to do it.
Asking, I'm not personally asking for that. I would like to see, because from your experience, you would know that some of those 10 or 15 are not really going to be applicable to us. I would just want to give us some options.
Right. And you can see that Chula Vista and El Cajon use 2 lowest water months. Some people use everybody's lowest read during the winter. Other people take a rolling 5-year average. There's a lot of different ways out there to try and handle this. But I can bring you back some examples. You can see what that does dollar-wise, because remember, the less water that goes into the coefficient, the higher the rate's going to be.
Well, that's why I think we need to look at this, and it's not one of those things, I think you should only do it in the month of December or something like that. We need to really see how it affects everybody.
Right, and we can do it off your most recent statistics, although this is going to be kind of a bad year to do it off of because it never rained and it's been hot and people have been watering. So I think what you might find statistically, and what I'm seeing is that this winter, if you're using winter month average, you hit that 75% that I'm already using as a rate of return.
I understand, and maybe you'll be able to compensate for that, and when you look at it,
I think I'll
bring
go
it back
back
to
a
us.
couple of years and find a rainier year and then compare it to this year.
I appreciate that. I think that's thinking ahead of us on that one, because we probably would have questioned you if you'd come back with it just this last
And
year.
it looked just like the other thing. Yeah. So, and the La Mesa and Lemon Grove do use the 100% of the annual water
Well,
usage.
Which is,
And then they
that's
use
okay,
a rate
that's
of
their
return.
that's their problem.
Coronado, by the way, is doing a study right now. They want your rate structure.
Well, good for them. I mean, it might
Your
be.
old city managers there as their public
That-
services
That
director.
could be the problem. No, no. The real thing is that it might be that what we have today is the best. But I think what I personally, and I would believe my colleagues would agree, is I think it'd be nice to see options, and then we can make that decision based on what you present to us.
Yeah, and as I say, everybody does things a little differently, but it's a management decision, and that's what is your job. You know, I'll give you the numbers, and it's your decision to say, this is what we think is best for our residents.
But I also believe that when we bring in experts like yourself, that you should give us your expert advice. And not
Oh, I
just
will
make-
definitely.
Okay.
I will make a recommendation. You
Okay.
know me, I'm not quiet. So.
I know that that's not what we're asking for here,
Yeah.
but I think Mr. Levine, Mr. Hall, hear what we probably would, and I think that would help a little bit of our concerns that we've had over the last two
Right.
times we've discussed this
And I
item.
do want to add one thing about this chart, the difference in the revenue. When I did the rate study, we didn't know that you shouldn't be billing the Navy. And the estimated billing to the Navy is $140,000 a year. So actually, if the Navy had paid, was still paying.
Totally understand. Totally understand. I mean, we dealt that. They put in a new pipe someplace else, and we understand that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay.
It's fine. It's fine. Thank you.
So that deficit will go through all 5 years.
We understand.
Okay. I just wanted you to understand that that's not a real shortfall. It's a bye-bye to the Navy.
Correct. Okay. Do we have any other comments for her while she's here? Mr. Bilbrick?
Just a comment, but appreciate you coming back in the future and bringing us options. That was kind of the whole point of what I was saying last meeting, Mr. Levine. It wasn't so much the rate increase, it was more the fact of how we were doing our billing. I wanted to make sure that we were being as fair as possible to single-family residential and not really giving breaks to multifamily. Single family is going to upkeep their lawn a little bit better than, say, my uncles and my father with their apartment complexes. So, but it was something I had to bring up, especially living in my family. Dinner can get a little feisty at things like this. So I appreciate that. And Mr. Levine, you really do have the hardest job. It might be thankless, but as soon as somebody's toilet doesn't flush, they're all going to come screaming to you. So thank you.
Thank you. Unless we have any further questions, Mr. Spriggs, please.
I'm still on the 1.6.
Okay.
Okay. Let me tell you what the 1.6
So
is.
how much revenue does the 1.6 generate?
I don't do math in my head real well. Rate study,
So
about 100K. I mean, it's the
Okay.
difference between the 4.4 and the 4.3.
All right, so Mr. Levine, on page 2 of your report, and I don't want to belabor this, but I just want to understand that we're covering whatever the shortfall is. You at the bottom after your list of projects that are $1.9 million in projects, you then have thus the estimated capital reserve is 1.765. The estimated capital projects is the 1.910, and there's a shortfall in capital project funding through 14-15, and then staff's evaluation therefore is a 1.6% increase is needed. That's the very next sentence. So the shortfall is not stated, but I did a little math, and it's 144,279. That's the difference between the projects and the reserves. So is that the amount that the 1.6% increase?
No,
It's
it
gonna
does.
generate?
It has nothing. It has nothing to do with that. There's nothing to do with that.
No, it's Councilmember Spriggs. On this slide, the 1.6 generates the difference between the 4.402369 rate study revenue for FYO 14-15 and the 4.333933, which is about 70K plus or minus. That's what the 1.6 would generate, or is estimated to generate.
Councilman Spriggs, maybe I can step in a little again. I'm not trying to.
Yeah. That, unfortunately, as I said, that deficit, the difference, the 118,865 and the 17,184, is caused by the Navy no longer contributing to the city of Imperial Beach. They're paying San Diego directly. And that deficit will technically, of that amount, is all the way through all 5 years, because the Navy was considered to be paying in about $140,000 every year.
But on the other side of the ledger, we won't pay to treat that. So
yeah,
in the end, it's a balance. But looking at it, and it's all we could go off of was the study that was completed. The study will continue to show that deficit because we are anticipating having those Navy revenues and those Navy expenditures. But what we believe is that if we, and again, we kind of went through this today and went through the study, we believe that if we follow the study and we are consistent with the increases that were included in the study, our revenues should balance with our expenditures, even though it won't ever, those numbers will never be consistent with the study because the study was based on what is now a changed factor that we don't get the revenue nor have the expense of treating the effluent that comes from the Navy. So it's difficult to show on a chart because we're using the numbers that were generated by the study, but that will always be skewed because those are no longer correct.
When do we update these studies?
Every 5 years. I mean, we can do it
Right, and,
soon.
yeah, I understand that.
And if, let's say, you decide that you want to change how we treat the return to sewer for your users, then we probably need to update the study because it would generate different rates.
Once again, when did we do this one?
We did this one last year.
So yeah, we would normally. That's why it's going to look
So
weird for a little
normally you
while.
would do it every 5 years.
Okay.
The Navy issue did not surface till after the
Understand.
study was
Understand.
complete.
Any other questions? Will we ever? Thank you very much for your. Oh,
Comment. At what point are we going to change our graph for the information, our staff report? At what point is that going to be changed so that next year we're not having the same discussion? Or are we going to have the same discussion and we're going to go, oh yeah, it's that 1.6, it's with the name, you know. At what point is what we're looking at the reality?
Well, if I'm hearing the council correctly, you're leading staff to relook at how we calculate our rates on our customers based on whether you're going to do it in a year or whether you're going to do it on the lowest month or the lowest 5 months or whatever number you want to choose. So we'll be doing that, and as part of that, we'll have to really look at the whole revenue program and expenditure program and come back with, if you choose to change it, you know, with a new Prop 218 report.
I'm not suggesting tonight that that's what we just had our study. We have our study every 5 years. We knew that we had a rate increase of 3% last year. The next 4 years it's going to be 1.6. I'm okay with that. I think our residents understand that. What I'm asking for is that our staff report is reflective of, and I understand that we had this issue with billing in the Navy and they're now doing something else, but I'm hoping that the next time this comes forward, it's a little bit easier for us to understand why without going through this much dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, as you know, we have 218 issues, and so we have to use the study as the basis. But I think what we could do is we could update even just that portion of the study and back out the projection for the Navy and make it read much more clear the next time we come back. Until we had this discussion, though, that's very difficult to do. We should be using the study that was used for the rate increase because that's what justifies it with the 218 issues in the state of California. So we needed to use it for tonight, but I very much understand the value in going back and updating at least that portion of the study to back out the anticipation of the Navy revenues and expenditures, which will make it much easier to explain in the future.
Right, because then it would actually show a slight surplus. Because if you take, the 140,000 that the Navy was supposed to build, take that off of it, that 118 would actually be a positive number, a slight positive.
Thank you very much on that. Any other questions? I think we've given staff an idea of it, but what we really have before us is the resolution to move forward with 1.6% increase. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? So that's the motion. Let me clarify that. I'm sorry, Ms. Bragg. Motion to adopt resolution 214-7483. Motion and a second then. Will we please vote?
Motion carried by the following votes. Ayes, Janney, Bilbray, Bragg. Abstentions, Spriggs. Absent, Patton.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and jump back to item 3.1. The city attorney has been able to put together the resolution as we had asked for. Do we have any?
Yeah, Mayor, I'll just quickly go through this. I believe copies have been passed out as well as I believe made available back there in the public section. But essentially all you have is that 2.32.020B shows a revision, and it'll simply read members of the Parks and Recreation Committee may be removed in accordance with Imperial Beach Municipal Code Section 2.18.030. 2.32.020, a new Section F has been added to say notwithstanding Imperial Beach Municipal Code Section 2.18.040, all members of the Parks and Recreation Committee shall be residents of the city unless the City Council determines by a 4/5 vote that a non-resident shall be appointed due to special expertise that is not available among resident candidates. No more than one non-resident shall serve on the committee at one time. And then there is slight revisions to 2.32.040 to provide that the committee, on at least a quarterly basis or as directed by the City Council, will provide updates to the council.
Is that what we're looking for then, as far as input on the ordinance, and then on
that reads very well. Good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very expeditious on that. So I entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2014-1145 as was seen before us.
Mr. Mayor,
So moved.
As introduced.
I
Oh,
need
we
to-
introduce is all we're doing right now.
Yes.
Okay, introduce or motion to introduce.
I need to read the title.
Got you. Go ahead.
Ordinance number 2014-1145, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Imperial Beach, California, amending the Imperial Beach Municipal Code by adding Chapter 2.32 to create the Imperial Beach Parks and Recreation Committee and establish committee duties and responsibilities and providing an effective date.
Now I'd like to entertain a motion to introduce and conduct the first reading of ordinance 214-1145 by title only and waive further reading in full and schedule a second reading by title only and adoption of the ordinance on June 4th, 2014. Motion is second. Could we please vote?
Mr. Mayor, please vote. May we have an oral vote, please?
Didn't take any of my votes. Can't even adjourn the meeting now. Could we take an oral vote? All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Motion carried unanimously by those present, Patton absent.
Moving on to item 5.2, what we have before us is the discussion and direction regarding the 4th of July fireworks. At our last meeting, we'd asked a volunteer group to show some due diligence in where we could go forward with this thing. I personally have had conversations today, and actually some text messages with Ms. Unger concerning this. I think personally they have done a fantastic job of getting out there and showing that the community really wants these fireworks. They've raised money. They have commitments for more money depending on what action we take this evening. And I know I'm going to bring Ms. Unger up to discuss where she's at in the thing, but I think from what I'm hearing from our last meeting and what it sounds like, the folks want out here that the city should move forward to support having fireworks, and even to the point that I think that maybe we should be the signer of the contracts, if you want, and take that forward so that the only requirements or asks that we are from the volunteer group is to raise as much as possible to move this event forward. I think I have a lot of confidence that they're going to hit the numbers necessary. Our talk the last time was more about providing the services from the city at no cost to the event. Obviously, it's a cost to the city, but I think that the community has stepped up and said they want this and they're willing to put some money behind it. So that's where I think we should be going this evening, but I'd sure like for Ms. Unger to come up and talk to us a little bit.
Because I have been so busy raising money, I have not prepared anything for this evening's council meeting. Right now, where we stand, we have enough money to cover the first payment for the producer. He wants $12,500 by the 26th of May. We already have that money, and we would like to move forward with your blessing and your partnership in this. Right now, a little bit of the fundraising background. The first thing we're doing is we're already forming our street teams. These are groups that are going to go into the neighborhoods, knock on doors, ask for money, in the street on Palm Avenue, put money in the boot, that kind of thing. I think it's a grassroots fundraiser that everybody has done before, and I think will be very successful. A second fundraiser that we're going to be doing is the t-shirt sales. We are reproducing the whale that says Whale of a City on it, that was a logo of an old group called the Whalers. They were the first group that actually, you all have a picture of it, that they were the first group to raise money and publicly have this fireworks display in Imperial Beach off the pier. My husband's grandfather was a part of that group. You also have a picture of him with the thermometer that was very popular out in front of Union Bank for many years. Every time fireworks came around and people would donate money, little red line would go up. We also reproduced that. I didn't bring it in because it wouldn't fit in my car. We're going to do a media campaign. If the city chooses to be the contract signer, we ask that you put a PayPal on your website. We'll make sure that your website gets distributed through our social media campaign, and they can click on the PayPal and donate money. We're not asking the residents to donate big money. We just want $5, $10, whatever you can give, $1, even pocket change. It all adds up in the end. Community cocktail hour. We're talking with 2 different businesses right now who will host a cocktail hour and make a donation to us for the fireworks. Over 2,000 signatures we ended up collecting on our petitions. Let me see. We have 60 of these beautiful donation cans. Tonight, I would like to give each one of you a donation can. And I challenge you all to beat the others in collecting donations from your neighbors, your friends, your family, anyone. We have enough for all of you, including you guys. Let me see. Is there any? Do you guys have any questions for me? I'm sorry I come so unprepared tonight, but I've already spoke with Tom Clark, and all the things that were in the agenda that you had asked us to go over, he's already taken care of everything. He amazed me, like everything was taken care of, so you guys should be good on that. We will raise money until the very last day. So we'll be out there doing our campaigning, even if we hit our mark, we still want to continue fundraising. It's very, very important to us that we activate our community, that we get back into the community and let this be the community's event. We want the community to take ownership in it and have pride in it. And every year, we'll start earlier next year, we'll do this, and hopefully we can raise the entire amount and not have to lean on the city for any help. That's our plan.
I think, once again, I thank you very much for getting out there in front of this. It really made a difference. I agree. I wish you would have started a little earlier. I don't like being pushed this way personally, but I should have mentioned that Mr. Clark had worked with you very well, and he's actually done a lot behind the scenes before this meeting to make sure it is actually possible. I think if it hadn't been for him working on it ahead of time, we might even have pushed ourselves too far out, no matter how much money you worked on. So I would like to basically, if it takes it, make a motion for the city to take this event and move forward with it, and to work with the volunteers as far as raising funds, but to, from the city's standpoint, to do the permitting, whatever is necessary to contract with this organization that they've brought forward that is doing the fireworks all around the county, and work out the details of how the money comes from yourself into the city. We were expecting you to cover the cost of fireworks, and you have noticed that there are some other costs beyond our public safety and public works, and I know you're going to do your best to make sure you cover those things, such as porta potties or pier things and that. But we've worked well with our port, and everybody else is on board. I think we can make this happen, and I think could be a great event.
Let me just tell you guys, because I think this is really impressive. I've only approached a handful of people so far. Between 8 people, we've raised $13,184. Between 8 people who are that passionate about bringing this back. I have quite a bit of money on the line right now if this goes through tonight. So
I think that's what we need to do, is support you, because what you've got is commitments. If we will commit to you, and I think that we can do that. I'm not speaking for all of them. I'm sure that they might have some comments on this, but that's what I'd like to see from my standpoint. Mr. Spriggs?
Right, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad we're all on the same page. I think we are. At our last meeting, what I had urged is that the city take care of all of the technical work, the contracting work, the insurance, even and the permitting, and leave it to the community, represented by you, Candy, to raise as much money as as possible, the 50-50 kind of arrangement that we talked about. So I'm glad we're back to that. It would have been nice to have had an external nonprofit of one kind or another, maybe the chamber, maybe somebody else, be the repository of the funds. But given the time available, I think this is really the best solution, is that the city create a fund or a PayPal account or something, so you can have the checks made out to somebody, and get about raising the money.
Right, and I think that was part of, the chamber was 100% behind us. They've been incredible. They wanted to, help us in any way and partner up and do this together, and they still are. And they just don't have the nonprofit status that would allow a regular person with no business to get a tax break or a tax, deduction or credit. So, so it would be so much better if you would so kindly be our 501c3.
Be nice. It looks like we
You
are.
can do it because we did it for the skate park, so I know it's possible.
We can get money. So, any other comments on this, Ms. Bragg?
I just had a question. In our discussion, maybe Mr. Hall can answer this or Mr. Clark can answer it. How are we standing with the Port District on permitting or any of those other permits that we've had to have in the past?
Yeah, Councilmember Bragg, I'm going to ask Chief Clark to come forward because literally it's changing by the hour. And I know he was on the phone while we've been in this meeting, and he may have even a more recent update, so I'll turn some time over to him.
Well, I think you guys all need to thank Sandy Purden, because Sandy had a permit for us for the Water Resource Board that went back to 2010. That was a permit that went for 5 years. Every year you got to pay into that permit. This year it was $2,065. He is allowing us to work under his permit, so that fee is waived to us. So congratulations to Sandy on that for helping us out. The port is still charging us a $1,000 entry fee, right of entry to be on the pier. My thought is that after we work this throughout, we can get a hold of somebody that might have some influence with the port and request at their council, at their board meeting, because their policies are just like ours. They got to follow the guidelines, and their real estate assets group is saying they have to charge us that $1,000. What I'm hoping for is that we can ask them to waive that at their next meeting. So that will be covered. The CEQA intent to do the fireworks has already been taken care of. That report has been filed. It's in process. There's $50 for a fee for that, and then another $208. That's hard costs that we'll just have to pay for because it's a processing with the county. But everything else with the port and the county is going forward.
On the port's $1,000, I know it's great to say that we could save $1,000. The port seems to have a little bit more money than that. So I would not like to jeopardize what else we could get from the port over $1,000. I can listen to Ms. Unger. I'm sure she could cover that if it was really necessary.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to push them to make it an issue as far as that part, because I don't think it's worth it for our relationship with the port.
It's not one that's going to kill this program. It's just one that sees if we could maybe.
We remember there's 7 members of the port commission.
Right.
We don't want to push it too far.
I got it. That's interesting.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks.
Mr. Hall, do you need anything from us? Do you want us to make a motion and do this, or pardon me, Lori again?
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Candy, I can't thank you enough for bringing this forward to the community, but I would like to speak to my colleagues and city manager, next time when we come up on our budget, that this is an issue that comes before us all the time. I think it would behoove us, when we're next year doing our budget, that we sincerely address this issue, not be blindsided. Here it is, May 21st, and we're trying to put on a fireworks program. Of course, now the hard part becomes, okay, we're going to put on a fireworks program. What are we going to not do this year because we have used funds that were allocated for something else? Let's be wise about it and plan for it in perpetuity, with something that...
And you'll be pleased to know that Commissioner Malcolm did state, because, it is a completely different organization, he didn't think there was time for the port to help us, but he's committed to trying to help us next year. So that from a budgetary standpoint, it might be that we can offset, along with community, things like what's been going on, to be able to help offset that as far as for future, because he did say that when he was here 2 weeks ago, that he would put that on to try to make sure that we have it again next year.
And then just to, in conclusion, Candy, I think that these cans are absolutely the key to this funding stream also. People in the community want fireworks.
Yeah.
And I think we'll find that these cans will rattle, they'll shake, rattle, and roll with money.
and with 60 of them, it's going to be hard to get away from it, I think. And to thank Tim O'Neill for the cans. They were donated by PPG, Glidden Professionals. We didn't have to pay for anything. They kindly donated them to us.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hall, did you need something more from us, or do you want us to take a motion for an action for you to take this forward?
I think we have our direction, but just so the council knows, there will be a few things that we need to bring back to you, including some agreements, perhaps even with some businesses on the pier, and some of the other things that the council will need to take action on, and we will prepare those and bring them back to your next meeting. But I think we have clear direction, unless some, I think the mayor's motion that he made earlier would cover anything we need to move forward.
Then we have a motion and a second to move forward, right? Could we please vote? Is this going to work? No.
Mr. Mayor, can we have an oral vote?
Yes, we can. All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Thank you very much.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
And thank you for all your efforts. I know there was a lot more than just the two of you, but I think there's a lot of community members behind you. Moving on to item 5.3, Mr. Wade.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. This is the second council briefing for the Palm Avenue Mixed Use and Commercial Corridor Master Plan. You may recall that on April 16th, you received your first briefing, and I just wanted to report back to you on some of the community engagement and outreach components of this project that we've been undergoing. As was reported on April 16th, we had our first community workshop on April 29th right here in the community room. Very well attended. There were 32 people who signed in, although it seemed like there were quite a few more than that who actually attended. Very lively discussion. We gave a presentation of the project, and the objective being to reintroduce the project and the master plan concepts to the community, validate, if you will, that plan, and get comment and see if we were still on track. And happy to say that in a general way, everybody was quite supportive of the concepts. There were concerns raised and comments taken. I provided you with those comments as an attachment to the staff report. Since the time of the staff report, the project team has provided responses to each one of those comments. All that information has been uploaded to our webpage, so people can go to the webpage and look at the comments. We had different means of providing those comments. The way the workshop operated was there was a presentation given. Then we had several stations around the room and plans laid out, large-scale plans superimposed on high-resolution aerial surveys. And community members could either write their comments down, discuss and provide verbal comments to the project team members, and also have them written down on poster boards. So we compiled all that information, provided those comments in the attachment to your staff report, and as I mentioned, we've provided responses to each one of those comments. We continue to receive comments on our website. There's a dedicated web page and an email address to which members of the community can send comments as well, so we're compiling those separately. And I've been sort of on a tour, a roadshow, if you will, this month, giving presentations to pretty much any group that we can. Starting with the Design Review Board last Thursday at 4 p.m. in this room. We had a couple members of the community also attend that. Subsequently, they provided verbal comments, so we've taken comments from the Design Review Board. Again, that board, which was actively involved in the master plan effort as a stakeholder group and a reviewing body, also quite supportive of the concept still, provided good input, and then presented to the Kiwanis Club yesterday at their noon meeting. Another good show up, and a lot of, or attendance rather, a lot of, I don't know if it was for me or the student of the month from Pence Elementary, but they had a lot of good questions, a lot of good comments, and so we compiled those as well. And again, generally supportive of the concepts. I don't think we've had anybody at any of the outreach efforts or through the participation, save for a couple comments. There's always going to be some people who just don't think this is the right way to go, but I think everybody is generally quite supportive. And I would say the comments and concerns are your typical look at traffic impacts. There's concerns with pedestrian safety. There's concerns with how the local access lanes might function and those kinds of things. So nothing earth-shattering in the way of public comment. I'm also planning to speak tomorrow morning to the chamber at the chamber breakfast at the Dempsey Center at 7:30. So there will be a presentation then, and then to the BID on Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. in the community room right here at City Hall. So still getting out there, getting the word out, engaging the community. We're providing email notifications of these meetings to our email database, and again, very happy so far with the response and the level of response. One other item I wanted to update you on that's also discussed in the staff report is that we did receive, as promised from Caltrans, a letter of comment that was also attached to your staff report just prior to the workshop on April 29th. Based upon those comments, and I will say that as mentioned in the staff report, there are a few of those comments that might be termed deal breakers, if you will, for some of the more ambitious proposals in our concepts. And so we requested a meeting, and actually were given a meeting within 2 days of that request. We met with Caltrans staff on May 1st. We had our traffic engineer going away for 2 weeks, so we needed to meet right away. And as I mentioned in prior meetings, Caltrans has been very cooperative, facilitating meetings and engaging in a dialogue, in assigning project staff to this, the review of the project. They also attended the April 29th workshop, so that was nice to see them there. And so we discussed the elements of most concern. They are primarily dealing with traffic speeds and what can and can't be required on certain levels of traffic speeds with respect to bulb outs at corners. Lane widths, there's a they won't go as any less than 11-foot lane widths, and in some instances we've proposed 10-foot turning pockets. And then there's also the requirement for 8-foot shoulders, which would all but preclude the local access concept if that was something that would have to be met. There is a process you can go through with Caltrans, which is called a design exception process, where you submit the proposal to Caltrans and they send it up to headquarters in Sacramento. What they agreed to do was discuss it with their headquarter liaison that they run these things by and get a first sort of brush response from that liaison. Been in contact with Caltrans today. They have heard back from him and they are assembling their comments, and we expect to get those early next week. So keeping our fingers crossed. I think if the answer was yes, you can get design exceptions, we would have heard that. So I'm guessing that the answer won't be the best answer, but we're hopeful that we can reach resolution on some of the more difficult items that will have to comply with the Highway Design Manual if Caltrans is going to be overseeing this project. That's really about the update for now. As I said, so far very happy with the level of interest, the level of participation from the community, and happy to answer any questions. Greg Shields, our project engineer and project manager with Project Design Consultants, is here as well if you have any technical questions or questions of him. So thank you.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Wade? It is an information item for us to keep us updated, which I think is important.
Mr. Wade, I think I had asked this question before, but do you plan a presentation in front of the City of San Diego, or are you going to be forwarding this plan to whoever district this is here?
I'm glad you asked that, Councilmember Bragg. We did have the staff member who is the senior planner for the Otay Nestor community at the workshop on April 29th, so he saw the presentation. Unfortunately, we were hopeful to have representation, and we're told we would from Councilmember Alvarez's office, and they didn't make it to the workshop. I am planning to request a presentation to the Otay Nestor Community Planning Group. they've been very outspoken in some of the Pond 20 issues that have come up, and that's the group that Michael Prince, who works with the City of San Diego, oversees and facilitates project review. So that's one thing I plan to do, and if need be, we will be engaging the Councilmember Alvarez's office about the project and giving a presentation. I would like also to mention that we did receive confirmation that the City of San Diego has received a $250,000 grant from the state. It's an environmental justice grant, but effectively they'll be doing the same thing that we did to start this project, which is looking at their section of the corridor from I-5 to the city of Imperial Beach and looking at ways in which they can improve the corridor, make it more essentially the same thing, pedestrian friendly, a safer environment, and also look at traffic improvement measures. As you know, that Saturn and Palm Avenue intersection is notoriously ineffective, if you will, and so it's going to have an impact on what we're trying to do, and so we see that as a very key element of this project as well. So
That's good news. That intersection, I think, is notoriously unsafe, as is that whole portion of Highway 75 right there, because there's always people darting back and forth, you know, and then they installed that fence, and people still go over that fence. So that is good news. If they can dovetail onto our project and just kind of follow along with it, perhaps we could invite somebody from David Alvarez's office to that May 27th BID meeting and give them one more opportunity to hear and be present and ask questions. That might be another good opportunity for them.
I'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Wade.
I'd like to make one comment, and then for people saying you brought up the City of San Diego, it was Mr. Wade and the staff here at the city that helped the city on that grant. They provided a lot of information from when we were a little bit out in front of them. I think it helped them a lot, and I'm going to help Mr. Wade in contacting and working with District 8 and their staff members, maybe not at the BID, but we want them to kind of continue what we've started and move it further east as much as possible. So, but Mr. Wade definitely helped them in getting that grant, though. That's that partnership concept. Yeah. Mr. Briggs.
Mr. Wade, so we're in this phase of the master plan development process. Where do you see this going? Sort of draw the roadmap in the longer term, because ultimately actual public works activity is going to have to take place to implement the master plan. And so what do you see the timeline being to get to that point? And so we have some sense as to how many generations from now we'll see a new Palm Avenue.
Well, we've had the first community workshop, so the next steps here will be to continue to compile the information we received from the workshops and the input, put them into drawings. A significant part of this was just talking with Mr. Shields about this is the Caltrans comments next week. So we can't get too much more done. We don't want to go down a road that, no pun intended, that might not be the right one. So we're waiting on that. There is another community workshop that will be part of this process in July. That's roughly July thereabouts. We will be providing monthly updates to the City Council. The current schedule for this part of the project is to get through the design development and have a plan upon which an environmental document can be drafted. Some of that preliminary environmental work has started, but not a lot until we actually have a project. We're giving ourselves 12 months to have that document completed and circulated for review. We have an 18-month window pursuant to the grant agreement with Sandag, rather. So we're giving ourselves a lot of flexibility in that schedule to make sure we meet the 18-month deadline, which I'm confident we will. So if we're looking at a notice to proceed was in January of this year. If we're looking at January of next year to have the environmental document complete, let's say February, the idea is to solicit grant funding to implement this project. That isn't to say we're going to get all of the money to do the whole project at once. However, there's a grant cycle that we submitted 3 grants today, as a matter of fact, for $400 million statewide grant project for active transportation programs, and Sandag's coming up with theirs in the fall. So there are large sums of money out there for projects like this. And so our objective would be to, with a project in hand, with an environmental document, seek that grant funding to start implementation, as well as hopefully see projects along the corridor implementing portions of it as they're developed, such as the Breakwater project. I'm confident that if we, assuming we get through the Caltrans, I don't know what to call it, issue, and we get a project approved and we get the environmental document approved, I'm confident that it would be eligible for grant funding to get large portions of this implemented. So you could see this project being factored into our capital program in the next capital CIP, and we could see construction a year after the environmental document is complete. So it's a little ambitious to say, but January, having an environmental document done, so maybe January, February, and then the next year to look for grant funding, and the following year to maybe begin some construction.
So that's our lifetime.
That is in our lifetime. Now that's ambitious, and I'm being optimistic here. There's a lot of things that have to fall into place, but this project has legs, I believe, and I think it definitely has promise. Again, the Caltrans issue, as I mentioned in other meetings, we still have to negotiate and navigate that whole issue, and you know, we'll have more for you in the next briefing. They're finaling their transit corridor analysis, their analysis of the right-of-way for possible relinquishment. We should be having that study to us in the next couple weeks here, and so we'll have that information you requested back in early April back to the council so they can start evaluating whether or not that's even a realistic possibility of taking on that responsibility, given what the costs and what the improvements would be.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Wade? I did talk to some folks this morning in a meeting I was at. They had special signage and lines at the door in Sacramento with others applying for the same $400 million.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully you've got a very sharp pencil. You seem to have done that pretty well. It was kind of a joke that many people were applying. They had to have traffic direction up there in Sacramento for it.
Yeah,
that's you're on time. So thank you very much for the update. There's no action on this item. I take it, Mr. Holm? No? Then we'll move right on to item 5.4, and we'll bring Chris Hilmer up. You always have the fun stuff at the end.
All right, well, I'd like to think this is fun. It's a good way to end the meeting. We just finished up another recent grant on dealing with binational trash issues in the Tijuana River Valley. We have Oscar Romo and Jennifer Hazard here. They were the project leads on this grant, and they're going to present some of the results on the grant and I mean some of the larger efforts that are going on in the Tijuana River Valley and what we're trying to achieve, and hopefully end on some positive notes that there's some significant improvements that are actually underway in the Tijuana River Valley. And Oscar Romo and Jennifer Hazard are a big part of this. So, yeah.
Welcome, Oscar. Oh, yeah.
Thank you for having us, Chris, Mayor Janney, council members. Thank you. We just submitted our final report on the detection, mapping, and communication of solid waste sources in the Matadero and Los Sauces canyons in Tijuana. They both drain into the Tijuana River Valley, and we're just here to give you some final words and let you know what the deliverables were. The purpose was to create a scientific record of the problem. This is a follow-up study to a study, I'm not sure if you remember, we mapped dump sites in Los Orellas Canyon during the 2010-2011 storm season and tracked that flow across the border. So we asked the State Water Resources Control Board and Chris Helmer at Public Works to help us get this grant to look at the microbasins on to the west and to the east of Los Orellas. And the reason we need a public record is because if there's no record of the problem, there's no way to approach finding a solution. The record will serve as a technical implementation tool to affect policy change. You'll see in our deliverables. I don't want to give them all away in the beginning, but it's really helped getting the City of Tijuana's attention, the State of Baja California, the Semarnat, Mexican EPA's attention on this, and of course the overall purpose is to reduce the volume of solid waste flows that flow this way from Mexico. So on our deliverables for the comprehensive record, we mapped 76 informal open dump sites in Matadero Canyon. We created ArcGIS maps of both Los Sosas and Matadero. We have photo documentation of both those canyons, a database of our field observations that includes the slope, the mass, the geo coordinates, and we also worked with URS Corporation in La Jolla to come up with a brand new topography and hydrology map of the whole Tijuana River Valley. So now you've got this new valley map of the flood control zone in Tijuana and the floodplain on this side of the border, and we redrew all the microbasin boundaries. So now you have some nice shape files of all 7 microbasins that drain into the Tijuana River Valley. We did a lot of community outreach. I'm not going to read everything for you. We also facilitated policy change, and I think this is really the meat of it here, that we worked on the work plan with Semarnat. We worked on Baja California's work plan. We worked on the, the Tijuana, City of Tijuana's work plan. We worked with Ben Wesso's office to write a resolution in support of recovery efforts in the Tijuana River Valley. It passed the Senate 33-0, and it's waiting the vote on the Assembly floor. We included media in this effort. We even had a large group of environmental journalists come in from Mexico City. We gave them a tour, so we're really reaching out to educate the community in Tijuana.
Well, what you're looking at is the area of study to the left next to the ocean is the community of Playas de Tijuana. We conducted a study there. We didn't find any open dump sites. However, the only concern there is freshwater flows. On the next map, you can see that the area is densely populated, mostly migrants that came to Tijuana during the late 80s and worked for maquiladoras. They're not really residents of Tijuana before. And I'd like to explain part of the methodology. We took pictures of every single dump site, and we acquired some properties of that dump site so we can calculate the amount of trash, the direction it flows, and where the trash was coming from. With that, we produced a map that shows every single dump site, open dump site in that particular sub-basin, which was also shared with the City of Tijuana and other agencies in Mexico. Each dot represents a dump site, and it has this attribute. You can click on that map, which is interactive, and there's multiple pictures identifying the dump site. So the authorities can go back and check on the status of those dump sites. This is a picture of the sub-basin that didn't really present any problem. This is Playas de Tijuana. It's a middle-class community neighboring Imperial Beach. We submitted some recommendations in terms of freshwater flows. And I'm going to take you on a brief graphic tour of the canyon. This is right next to the water in an area called the Matadero. And this place has been designated as a conservation area, not yet approved by all the authorities, but you might see a park or some conservation type of element going on in that particular area. That's exactly where the flow of water and trash crosses into the United States and Imperial Beach. Moving south, this is a part of that particular area. As you can see, there's no trash in the system. Looks fairly clean. However, as you move further south, you're going to start seeing some trash to the point that just on the side of the creek, people go and dump. And these are not residents. These are mainly companies and businesses that take advantage of the lack of enough signage. This is federal zone. The city doesn't have jurisdiction over, or the state, but there's not enough signs. And the federal government only have 2 inspectors. So it's a desperate situation and people take advantage of that. As we move south, you see also that there's some neighbors, and they might produce some trash in the system because of the difficult topography. Trucks cannot get to those areas, so the trash accumulates at the bottom of the canyon. In other areas, it's not just the neighbors, but also the storm drains that drain directly into the creek, and the trash accumulates on those drains. As you can attest, when there's a road nearby, there's also an opportunity to dump. However, there's been some improvements. Well, that's a retaining wall. We're also addressing the fact that this tire retaining wall doesn't really work. They get dislodged every time it rains. So we're providing some training on how to do it. Take advantage of the tires, but doing it in a right way. Another example of a storm drain completely filled with trash that eventually might cross the border. However, the city has been very active, and Chris Helmer can attest to that. We've been to meetings where commitments have been made by the city authorities to remove the trash before it crosses the border, and they've done that diligently every year before it rains. So you'll see a lot of trash in the system, but not a lot of trash before the rain hits that area. And again, you can see the topography and the difficulty of removing trash from those neighborhoods. That's an area that before was a dump site, and now it's turning into a shopping center. That happens pretty often as soon as infrastructure gets there, land use changes. So you also see that these improvements are forced by the land value and investors coming and buying land. Jennifer, you want to talk about that?
Well, as Professor Romo was saying, that the trash that we're finding in the system is not predominantly household waste. Yes, households are dumping because they have no other option. The city of Tijuana is short trash collection trucks, so they're running double shifts into some of these neighborhoods. They're just going round the clock collecting garbage, but they don't always get, most residents don't always get weekly pickup. And many of the neighborhoods, the streets are unpaved and too steep, so that there's another reason why they sometimes dump on the system. But what we found was the predominant amount of waste was coming from mixed use and industrial. So you've got a lot of demolition debris in the system. So it's not 100% residential. I'm sorry, I don't know how to use that thing.
You want to search again?
Yes, please. So just to reiterate on our findings, it's unpaved roads and inefficient trash pickup that is part of the cause. Most of the dump sites are along the ridge lines. There's a lot of dumping from factories going on up there. And the neighbors really embrace every time we go in and do a study like this. They're embarrassed that their trash crosses the border. They want it to stop, but they need help from their community, and they need help from us on this side of the border as well. We're members of the Tijuana River Valley Recovery Team, and we're always talking about, well, maybe we can send our retired garbage trucks there, or maybe we can fund some projects south of the border. So they need our help to address this problem as well. It's going to have to be a regional effort. Oh, and Oscar, you want to talk about the comic?
Sure. Since sometimes it's difficult to convey technical information to people, we produce a comic that also serves as a guide to alternative methods to reutilize or repurpose trash. So this comic has been very well accepted, and while we have the support of the authorities, we want the community to understand how they can do, not just to protect the Tijuana River Valley, but their own neighborhoods. And we've seen, as Jennifer mentioned, that neighbors are embracing this policy. But also we need to perhaps pay respect to the way the city of Tijuana has been managing this. The fact that we produce this report allow them to learn about things they were not totally aware of, and they're doing something about it. They're investing their own resources. They're identifying other pots of money to fund infrastructure. In fact, Jennifer mentioned 3 different components: the work plan for the city, the state, and the federal government. By law, they had 100 days since they took office back in December to produce a work plan, and we were invited and able to put some language on their work plan, and they're identifying sources of money to fund and implement some of the recommendations we produced.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the update on all that. Do I have any questions for my colleagues on this? I think that your efforts are great. Getting the communities to really embrace it is the most important, because they can put the pressure on even the industrial folks. So, Mr. Patton.
How many landfills are there in that area?
Well, there's only one landfill, a designated landfill, and a designated stockpile. So sediment and construction debris should be moved to the designated stockpile, which is about 10 miles south on the river. And there's just one landfill for the entire city, which is about 30 miles away. So there's an expense that also prevents the city from being efficient. They're planning on doing transfer stations, and they'll probably build one right in Matadero County.
And is there any fines if somebody is caught dumping? Is there a fine that they can get, or is it just the way it is?
Well, there's provisions in the law. However, again, there's not enough inspectors, and this mayor decided to educate and then enforce the law. So he's giving community a period of 6 months to learn, and then he's going to start fining people, and not just the residents. The big offenders are the industries and the construction industry, who really need to understand that a creek is not a place to put the sediment or the demolition material. Some industries save money by dumping, but eventually that's not beneficial for them. There's a wrong image they're putting on with their neighbors and with their constituents. So educating must be the best solution. They're planning on modifying the city ordinances to put stricter rules, but that's in the process.
But I think it's wonderful you're taking these steps now, because this is a source, and we've always said, we don't want pollution, we don't want this and that, but you're taking these steps, and without these steps, it just stay the same. So I commend you. So keep up the great work.
Thank you.
And yes, thank you for the opportunity to contract on this with Chris. City of Imperial Beach has been huge supporters of our work, so we really appreciate it.
This was great.
We definitely are very interested in this, and thank you very much for your work and for the report. I think for us, the key thing is, what do we do with it? The action steps, the next thing, to support the efforts of the city of Tijuana to accelerate the cleanup, expand the cleanup before the rainy season that's a big point in time where a major difference can happen. And I'd like to kind of get your sense as to how effective that has been, 50%, 40%, 70%, and what can be done to make that 100%? And is it possible that maybe some sort of joint action involving non-governmental organizations can supplement the efforts of Tijuana to do this at this point in time, or volunteers, or I don't know. I think we just whatever creative solutions, because that is the opportunity. In addition to the enforcement and the regulatory and working with the companies, the things that you both pointed out, there's still at the bottom line. The bottom line is whatever's left has to be taken care of, or it's going to come across during the rainy season. And so, what can we do? What kinds of measures can we support or encourage that could address that remaining problem?
That's a great question, Councilmember Spriggs, because while the city of Imperial Beach discusses internal issues, I guess that discussing international issues is not frequent, and you're neighboring another nation, and that nation is now taking care of some of your problems. But I think that by showing interest, by perhaps visiting the city council, expressing your gratitude for what they're doing, and we can document that so you can make sure that what we're reporting is true. The money they have invested, the way they have tweaked their budget in order to make sure that they have enough money to do cleanups that they were not doing before. So during the last 2 years, they've been very active in trying to find out ways to stop the flow of trash. They might not be able to stop completely the flow of sediment, because that's a completely different issue, and the infrastructure to do it is extremely expensive. But they're willing, and they're actually in Matadero, in Los Laureles Canyon, they're building, almost finished, the largest sediment basin in the entire city of Tijuana. And that took a number of years. We initially approached them, and they funded a small project that was later abandoned and then was increased a little bit. Nowadays, and thanks to the recovery team and the frequent visits of members of agencies in the county, the city decided, well, it's time to build that sediment basin that is so needed. And now the largest and most important piece of infrastructure on sediment control is right next to the border. So I'm sure that with your interest, perhaps the moral support of the city of IB, the city of Tijuana will address this issue. Go ahead.
Well, what you could do in the very near future is attend the binational summit on the Tijuana River Valley Recovery Strategy on June 4th at Olivewood Gardens at 1 o'clock. We've sent out invitations. I know you all probably get a lot of email, but I know Mayor Janney, you must have gotten an
we try.
invitation because you're on the agenda.
The thing is I'm not sure if I'll have to find out if somebody actually put it on my agenda.
And one of the main objectives of that meeting is to come up with a 5-year binational action plan for coming up with collaborative projects where both the city of Tijuana, city of Imperial Beach, and San Diego can work on this together. So June 4th at 1 o'clock would be, or at 9 a.m. would be your first opportunity.
I really would be interested in that. And the question is does one have to crash it, or does one require?
Mr. Spriggs, we'll work it out because I'm not sure if he put it on mine. So you might get it.
Well, Chris Helmer has the agenda and all the logistics, so I'm sure.
So I've just been appointed to the International Boundary and Water Commission Citizens Forum, and there is a commonality of interest there as well. So I'd be very interested in if I can do it. Yeah.
In fact, let me add and conclude my remarks with this. We brought a wish list of projects to Tijuana, and every single project was fulfilled. From the very large of removing all the sediment on the Tijuana River channel, which was a large investment of about $10 million, to the construction of sediment basins, to the improvement of runoff infrastructure. And so we're now afraid of bringing more because we haven't responded. We're not helping, we're not providing funding, we're not committing anything. And they might be waiting for some way of us telling them, well, yeah, we recognize
Oscar,
it.
I'm going to ask you a favor because you know I'm not multilingual, of course, right? Your concept of speaking to the council and the mayor at a public forum, I would like to see if you might be able to facilitate that for me. I think it's very important that we express our gratitude for how much they have done. Sometimes we forget to do that, but I'm not sure, and I think that you probably can help me out on that, help the city out. Maybe one of my colleagues would like to go along on that, but I think it would be very important that we do that because, like you say, we haven't brought much to the table. City of Imperial Beach really doesn't have much to bring, but I think just the fact that we were there to say thank you for everything they have done, I think is more important than anything else.
I think it's an important moment in our relationship with Mexico because we all witness one day or another the flows of trash and wastewater. Wastewater is not an issue anymore.
Correct.
Trash is still an issue, but it's less. And sediment, at one point, conducting research studies, we have found that the Tijuana River Valley actually needs sediment.
I know.
So stopping the flow of sediment might not be beneficial for the valley. But these things need to be discussed binationally.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. I appreciate it, and thank you for working with our folks here. Chris, thank you very much for everything. I'm disappointed you always get stuck at the end of the agenda, though. Thank you. And actually, I'm looking at our agenda. I don't believe it necessarily. I'm going to put one more item on here, but I don't believe in singing happy birthday, but I would like us all to wish Councilmember Bilbray a birthday. His birthday is tomorrow. I won't go into how old he might be, but happy birthday, Councilmember. Really? Really? Well, congratulations, too. Then we won't go into your age either. That is unique. That is great. Two of you. Thank you. Happy birthday. And the meeting is adjourned.